Hey folks, this video is brought to you by RivianStories.com. Please join us there to get the latest Rivian news, pics, and videos from Rivian owners and fans. We also have t-shirts, hats, and gear guides for your next adventure. Also, if you want to listen to the full episode of today's video segment, just search for Rivian Stories in your favorite podcast app. Lastly, please do like and subscribe. It actually does make a huge difference and helps us keep creating content. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. Matt Carter, thank you for coming on here. We're excited. We have a lot of people in the RS community who have totally gotten into this whole PPF ceramic coating thing. Several people ask us, get an expert on. I'm sure Jimmy or Skylar is an expert, but not enough for me. So we're bringing you on, brother Matt. And so we're thankful that you're here. Can I just ask you, can I ask you to give us just like the 30-second 1-minute bio, like where you're coming from in this?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've always been excited about all things detailing ever since I was 16. I've been involved in the high-end detailing industry since about 2012, so for about 10 years, and into PPF since about 2018. So I think for the last 5 years of that, it's kind of been my second full-time job building this business, Detail Peoria. And so, yeah, it just kind of hobby that's taken over my life, and I just absolutely am super passionate about it.
Awesome. Well, I know I'm down the road from you guys, Springfield, an hour away. So depending on how this goes, I might be driving my future R1S to you guys. We'll see. Oh boy, here we go. Yep. Last question here about your personal deal. How long have you been working on the beard game? That's important.
This is all since COVID. So pandemic hit, and I was like, you know what, we're going to give it a shot. It took a good little bit to grow in, but I'm liking it now.
Awesome. So PPF, ceramic coating, is what we're going to try and focus on today. I'm just going to ask the first one, then I'll let Skylar or Jimmy ask any follow-ups. A lot of people, and probably most people listening to this, understand PPF. We're going to start on that one. We'll get to ceramic coating later. But PPF is the big one. A lot of people know about it, but could you just give your short explanation of what it is?
Yeah, so paint protection film, I mean, you could think of it essentially as like a screen protector for your paint. So it's there to absorb rock chips and some of that damage that really no other protectant can provide for your paint. So it can absorb things like high impact rock impacts, and it'll take the damage instead of your paint. And so you won't see those chips and that discoloration from a section where paint has been removed. And the idea is that it's as inconspicuous as possible. There are some limitations with that I'm sure we'll get into here. But yeah, the very high level is that, you know, it's there to provide that high impact protection for your paint.
Okay, so what it is, and we've got a couple of the benefits then right out of the gate. Skylar or Jimmy, do you want to wiggle in here right now? Do you want me to keep going? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I got a quick one. So Matt, how does it stand up to crazy X's?
Stand up to what?
You're an idiot.
Go ahead, say it again. So he said, how's it stand up to crazy X's?
Oh, crazy X's. I mean, it depends on how crazy they are. I mean, there are limitations. It's not a full force field.
But, I mean, it is resistant to a certain degree of scratching, like potentially keying and things like that.
Yeah, any casual observer, somebody that's like, you know, I want to key your EV because I'm, you know, all about burning liquefied dinosaurs for the rest of my life. You know, they're really going to have to gouge into it to really get through the film. I mean, your normal guy is just going to casually pull his keys out and swipe it while he's going through. He's not going to get through the film. You're going to have to really work at it.
So we have a sacrificial layer. Screen protector is a great way to say it. There are some other pros that some people are getting into as far as just look. I mean, Jimmy actually did a stealth wrap. I think what I'm going towards here, that could be a pro. And then to get to the cons, there's these different kinds, right? Can you just talk about like what you're applying at your shop, reputable PPF brands? I think I'm also getting towards like what should we be looking at, like as far as asking our detail shop before we go forward with this?
For sure. Yeah. So It's a very growing industry. I mean, since about 2011, the films have really kind of graduated to this new level of quality, where they're not yellowing anymore, and then they've added things like self-healing top coats. So that's really another pro that I didn't touch on before. You've got that protective layer, but then also high quality films are going to have a self-healing top coat, and what that is. Just the very top layer. If you get swirl marks, things like wash marks, marring, things that you see in the sun. Some people, if you're not really familiar with some of these terms, you see like the spider webbing on your paint and the real bright, harsh sunlight. That type of stuff will self-level with a lot of these films. So some people, if you've got really super soft black paint, that could be a major benefit. You don't have to be as careful with your wash process, things like that. You also mentioned, like stealth conversion. So that's kind of a part of the industry that's really growing now. You mentioned that matte finish. You can kind of, I guess everybody knows PPF for, the gloss versions. It just makes your paint super shiny, protects it. But there's also, a matte finish on those that, whatever color your car is, it'll just make it a matte version of that. It's not like vinyl, not color change, but it will change the sheen of your paint, which is really, we're seeing, it lends itself well to these modern designs. So we see a lot of Teslas grabbing these. I haven't seen Rivians are just coming out now, so I haven't seen one wrap stealth yet. But these modern designs lend themselves well to that kind of luxury finish.
Yeah, very cool. There's an El Cap one, which is like a dark gray. You guys have done a few trucks, right, to this point for Rivian?
Yeah, we've done 4 or 5 trucks now.
Do you remember the colors? Have you done an El Cap one yet? It's like kind of a dark gray with a little bit of a blue undertone.
I know we've done a green, we've done a white. I think we have done an El Cap granite as well.
Okay, so there's like one El Cap with a stealth wrap in it. I will say, like it was really cool looking. Like it was totally tough. It almost looked like fake, like it was a computer generated image, like like from the picture, like the way it diffused light and whatnot, which I think is cool. So the brands that Stealth is the brand from like Expel.
That's right.
Yeah. So can you speak into like brands, and I guess you probably like Expel then. If there's someone like a detailer in someone else's neck of the wood and they're not using that, like what are the questions they should be asking, or what are some of the other brands that you might recommend?
I mean, the biggest thing that I tell people to look for is your installer. Your installer makes more difference than what film they're using. That said, there are some leading brands. Stek, STEK. Lumar, Suntech. I mean, the list goes on what some of these high quality films are. We go with Expel just because they're the 800-pound gorilla in the room. They can provide the best support. They have the most money to throw around into innovating, and they've really backed their product the entire time that we've used them. They stand behind it. So that's something that we want to bring into our shop. If our customers are looking at this type of investment, we've seen Expel stand behind their 10-year warranty. So that's one of the big things for us. But really, it just comes down to when you're shopping for this stuff, I wouldn't get too caught up in that.
Okay.
Like I said, I do prefer Expel, but your installer is the person that you're going to be dealing with. If you have a problem with it, you want to know that installer is going to stand behind their install, that they're going to stand behind the film that they're putting out into the world, because they need to do this vetting process that we did as well when we decided to bring in the new service into our shop. We tried all kinds of different films. We've installed professionally other films as well, and I mean, every shop owner is going to have to kind of stand behind that.
Okay. So in addition to a shop that's going to stand behind their product, you say the most important thing is the installer. There's got to be more than just standing behind the product. I mean, this is a skill, right?
Absolutely.
The quality of it. Is that what you mean?
Yes. So I guess I'll take it back to 2018 when we wanted to do this in the first place. I was we we had the demand in our area for a long time. There wasn't really anybody doing it, and we knew it was something that we wanted to get into. I eventually I watched a couple of YouTube videos, and I'm like, man, this looks easy. We can freaking do this. So we signed up for Expel. 3 of us from our company went down for 3 days or 4 days, it's most of a week to install down there. We sat in for like a third, I think the first half day was school learning. And I remember we all went to the bathroom for a break right before we started laying film for the first time, and our eyes were just bug-eyed, wide open. And yeah, it's hard. So you're not laying good quality installs until dozens of installs down the road. So I'll pause right here. If you're thinking, some people get the idea that they're going to install it themselves.
That's where I was going. Yep.
Do not. Like I'll tell you, you're going to end up with a several hundred to several $1,000 ball of plastic on your garage floor, almost guaranteed.
Yep.
Or it's just not going to look very good. It takes a long time. It's 5 figures of investment in film and tools just to get started, and then probably 5x that in ruined film. I'm probably way underestimating that ruined film as you're getting up to speed. It's a very highly skilled process.
With that being said, what are some of the best questions to ask to an installer to help kind of vet or validate that that they know what they're doing and that they're going to do a quality job?
Yeah, I would look to kind of reviews. I would try and do some of that research on my own, try and see what they have out there. Are they posting on social media of PPF installs constantly? How long have they been installing film? If they've been installing film for if they've just brought the service on and they've just had it in for like a year or two, they're still in the growing phase and they're still learning on their installs. That said, I mean, they may have brought in, then the question that I would ask is, how long has your installer been installing film? I guess you can ask what certifications your installer has, but, take that with a grain of salt, because there's still, somebody in my shop isn't going to take a job through all on their own until at least 6 months of laying film every day. They're going to be doing small jobs, and their lead tech is going to be kind of managing the quality and making sure that they have what they need. So that would be one thing, is like, how long have you been offering these services? Can you point me to like a portfolio of work? What types of cars have you worked on? How are you laying film every day? Is this something that you just put on, when you get an inquiry for it every, once a month, that type of thing? You want somebody who's laying film every day.
Yeah. Are there any questions about the technique or process that different installers use that might differentiate a high quality install from maybe a lesser quality install?
On the technique side, there's really not much. You can either get the film down without issue, or you can't. And just to kind of describe how this film is installed for someone who's maybe not familiar with it. Basically, we've got this big, giant, fairly thick, clear sticker that we're trying to manipulate and conform to the contours of your car. And the way we do that is we float, with the adhesive side down, obviously, we float that film over the car, and that allows us to stretch it, manipulate it. You can lock certain sections, when they're in place, by squeegeeing out the water, or the slip solution, which is actually water and soap mixture. So you're going to squeegee it out and lock it down, and you're going to continue to manipulate that film around the panel until you've got it fully locked down. And really, in terms of like the techniques that you use, there's only one technique. It's just being able to float it and manipulate that film properly. One question, I guess, that's kind of come to mind that would be helpful for someone to ask is, are you wrapping edges? Are you doing a custom install, or are you just using pure kits and just aligning the edges? Typically, that's kind of one of the main differentiators when people are getting different prices from different shops for the same coverage areas.
So can you speak into both of those difference and
Sure.
what you're preferring at this time?
Yeah. So, and to elaborate on that a little bit, there are kind of two ways to install film. One is just a bulk install. So you are taking this big sheet of film, you're stretching it over the panel, floating it, locking it down, and then you've got this excess on the edges that you'll trim, and then you'd wrap them as necessary. And there's also a kit install. So one of the reasons that Expel is so big is because it was at the forefront on the software side. They had, the best kits in the industry, and it's a computer generated file that has all the panels of the car in it already. So you load the film in a plotter, it'll score the film and cut out the exact shape of, let's say, a hood that you're trying to install. And then what you'll do is you'll just line up the edges to the edge of the panel. And so you'll be able to see those edges if they aren't wrapped. The caveat to that, and that actually what we do in our shop, is you can modify those kits so that it lines up to the edges that you can't wrap, and then you wrap the edges that you can wrap. And it's all a balance between getting as much coverage, as many wrapped edges as you can get, while still making sure that the film is going to stay down. You need at least 1/8 of an inch of flat paint for that film to stick for good. Otherwise, you get some of the guys when they start to really push their installs and try and get more coverage, because that's what the PPF installers like to do. They like to flex and show that they're their installs are so much better. They start doing that, and then they're getting edges that lift up over time. So they may look good on day one, and they're flexing on social media, and then they don't. What you don't see is that car comes back 4 weeks or 6 months later, has to get the panel replaced because the edge came up.
And I think that too has a lot to do with the consumer, the customer too. I mean, for me, I was a newbie going into having the truck wrapped, and there were some areas that I thought, for instance, being the guy that is getting the truck wrapped, that they could have wrapped edges. And then after being that guy that was, I was at the shop almost every day while we taking pictures and watching him wrap it, watching the installer wrap it. And I was like, so why aren't you wrapping the edges on, for instance, the charge port door? And there's actually a little lip that he pointed out between because that piece of plastic is actually glued to the mechanism. And so since there's that little air gap that you would get, you won't get a good seal. So in that instance, he's like, you don't wrap that. You'll take it right to that point, and then you'll stop, because you'll get that air bubble in there because of that difference in elevation. And then you'll end up coming back, and I don't want to have to be the guy that replaces that. So I think from us too as consumers, there has to be a lot of faith too in the installer that once you pick that guy that you trust, or guy or gal that you trust the work that they're doing, and in the decisions they're making in order to have a good install, or the best install.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that's where and it takes time for these shops to build the reputation, but if you can find one where they've got a lot of rave reviews out there and a good body of work, that they've encountered these situations, or if you see that they've seen a lot of the same vehicle, that'll make sense. But yeah, that's a common thing. We deal with it all the time. Customers think that you can wrap things that are tough. Until you've worked with the film, it can be incredibly difficult, to get the things that you think you might be able to, coming in with without that background.
So as Kyle said earlier, we had our truck wrapped beginning of this month, and the one thing that it took me a little bit to get used to, or to get over, was because of how thick the material is, because some of the radiuses are extremely tight, especially on the R1T. There's the relief cuts. Can you speak can you speak to like the relief cuts in the material? So like you're not going to get, and I guess I'll just kind of spoil my question to you, like you're not going to get perfect coverage on the vehicle just because the material it's not magic.
That's right.
So can you kind of speak to the audience as far as like what they can expect? It's not like wrapping a 85 Nissan Maxima that was a complete rectangle,
Yeah. Yeah, there are absolutely limitations to what the film can and can't do, and it's very specific to what panel you're trying to cover, what some of the expectations maybe you've set for your customer for what to expect. But it is an 8 mil. So our standard that we install is an Expel 8 mil film. So that's a fairly thick in terms of like an automotive film. To put some context to that, vinyl is about 2 to 3 mils thick. So about a third or less of the thickness of paint protection film, and so it can't handle the damage. It's not gonna take absorb damage from rock chips, but it's a little bit it's more malleable. You can heat shrink it. You can get it around all these curves and radiuses a lot better. Whereas PPF, it just has limitations, and certain areas, if you have a really harsh edge, really harsh contour, or a compound angle, like you've got you're trying to wrap the point of a square, you've got things that are coming together here and here. You've got to stretch that film over that section, and really it's just never going to look right. You can only stretch the film so far before the adhesive starts to yield. And so you're going to see that adhesive. So you're really just limited there. You can only do so much, and then that's where relief cuts come in. So you'll add a seam, hopefully in an inconspicuous spot. Hopefully you'll be able to butt that seam up so that you really have to be looking for it to find it. And that's where your more advanced installers are going to excel. They're going to be able to make that install more inconspicuous than someone who's only a couple years in.
I'm going to point out something that he said that I think is important for people that may not know as much about this. So there are a bunch of, I call them color changing wraps, and those are vinyl. That is a different material from paint protection film, and it does not provide the same level of protection as PPF. So just wanted to kind of clarify that. I mean, they're two different products with different characteristics, and I think sometimes people confuse those. And
absolutely, that is a common misconception. If I can elaborate on that slightly too, that we get into that a lot with Expel Stealth, because people are looking for a texture change, or and even actually Steck and Expel have some color change wraps out there. So Expel has an Expel Black. You can make a panel fully black. Steck has they're coming out. I think they have somewhere between 9 and 13 different fashion films is what they call them. So they are color change, but they are thick like paint protection film. But we'll get customers come in and ask for like Stealth quote, and we'll give them. Stealth, you're usually looking at somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 depending on your vehicle. Well, they'll say, I can get it for $2,000 at in vinyl. It's like you're comparing apples and oranges. So it's important to know the one thing that you're not getting with vinyl is one is that protection, and two, really the quality too. It maybe a vinyl car will be a 5-footer, but when you get up close, you're going to see the squeegee marks, and then it ages poorly over time. Whereas the protective films will, especially if you go with something like gloss black, it's going to look like paint. It's going to be hard to tell that it's not paint. Whereas a gloss vinyl, you're going to see a lot of marks in it, install marks.
Great points. So I'm hearing a couple cons. We haven't got into the cons yet, and you mentioned $5,000 to $10,000. That could obviously be a con to anyone.
Absolutely.
As far as just the cost there. I hear another con, just that like depending on the experience of the installer, you could run into problems with it peeling, with it showing seams. and those seams can attract dirt and all kinds of, the seam just gets worse over time. And then you kind of just wish it was off. I mean, just trying to give a fair shake to people out there. Can you mention any other cons?
Sure. Yeah. It's not a miracle material. So we nobody's developed a force field yet. If we can install a force field on your car, make nothing hit it. That would be the ideal. You wouldn't be able to see anything, that sort of thing. You mentioned it too. Exposed edges. There are limitations with the film. They're one of the best things. My good buddy Jason Otterness of Chicago Auto Pros. Coined this, or at least this is where I heard the term. It's paint protection film, not paint perfection film. And as much as the end goal is to make the install as inconspicuous as possible, but at the end of the day, there are limitations. So you've got those exposed edges can attract dirt over time. We're trying to hide those in places where you're not going to be able to see them. The seam should be butted up enough that you're not going to get any buildup there. But you mentioned it too. That kind of has to do with the ability of your installer, and then of course the cost. It's not cheap, especially if when you start talking about doing a full car. So you'll see most people just focus on the high impact areas: front bumper, front part of the hood and fenders, maybe the rockers, or you go the full hood and fenders, and that can be a good level of protection. That's going to be most of the areas that the rocks are going to see, where you're going to see damage like this. But it can get expensive. My counter to that point that I just made would just be that if you save yourself from a repaint of a panel, you're keeping that OEM paint, which is going to always be at a higher quality than what you're going to get at a body shop, as that was sprayed in a multi-million-dollar spray booth set up specifically to run these cars through during the manufacturing process. Versus you get a good body shop, they'll do a very good job, but you're never going to get exactly that OEM quality of that paint back.
Mm-hmm. Good. That's super helpful. All right, so I have to me like maybe the biggest question, but I'm sure it's so difficult to answer. The question goes something like, who is PPF for? It might be like more what vehicles PPF for, but it's probably more like who is it for, the owner. And I don't know what I'm trying to ask here besides like who should be looking for this. And maybe it's a certain personality type, because you mentioned before like paint swirls, which Jimmy will not stand. He will not put up with it. And Jimmy's car, like I drove his Model S, and it's like immaculate, right? And so I think that like 100% like PPF for him is like, absolutely, Jimmy, you got to get it. But there might be some other personalities like, if you're not going to take care of it, and if you're just going to, because it's like you said, it's not magic, so you're gonna have to take care of it and stuff like that. Can you just kind of speak into like who it's for and maybe who it's not for?
Yeah, I would say, if you're bothered by rock chips, if that bothers you, then you weigh that against the cost of the paint protection film in those areas. That's who it's for. It's for the people who want to protect the paint on their ideally newer car. Ideally, you get it protected from the outset, and you've kind of protected that OEM paint. But I guess if you're somebody who kind of treats their car as an appliance, it's just a way to get from A to B. If you're like some of our customers who come in and they're like, well, I'd just like to pull my car out when it rains, and then that'll clean it off well enough, and I don't ever have to wash it. That's really what I want. Well, there's really no solution for that. You're going to get what you get.
So
and maybe PPF isn't the right answer. If that's the way you're going to care for it. So, I guess I would say PPF is honestly, in my mind, it's more beneficial for more people than ceramic coatings are. Ceramic coatings you have to take much better care of in order for them to continue to perform over the long haul. Paint protection film. Really, if it gets too dirty, I guess the big trick would be etchings. So you don't really want to polish on paint protection film. You can do to some extent, but as long as you're keeping your car clean enough that you're not developing harsh bird dropping or bug or water spot etchings, then PPF. If you can commit to caring for it in such a way that you won't be encountering some of those issues, then I would say it'd be a good idea to consider.
Skylar was going to say something. Go, Skylar.
Really quick aside, and I think it's hilarious that you mentioned like car outside to clean the car, because the oak pollen has been absolutely insane down here in Texas. My truck was yellow before we got 2 inches of rain today, so I was like, yes, my truck's not yellow anymore.
Yep. It's so true. And so I want to ask a follow-up on that. You go, so like if you're going to commit to, I just want to know if I get PPF, what's the minimum I'm looking for, just as far as like cleaning it, like with soap and like hand cleaning it. I'm assuming like, I'm not taking it through my wife's monthly pass that has the automatic stuff going around. And so are we talking like, okay, you need to hand wash it once a week, and I know so much of it depends on if I'm in a garage or under Skylar's oak tree. So, but can you give me, I'm looking for feedback here. I'm looking for you to tell me whether I should do this, Matt.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll say this is what I tell all my customers that come in for PPF or ceramic coating. The absolute ideal for a daily driver is that you hand wash it once a week. So it's just a part of your normal weekend routine. You hand wash the car, you're going to be in great shape.
Okay.
I don't do that myself. I can't. actually, a lot of people don't know this. I have a full-time job outside of what I do in detailing. And detailing for the last 5 years has been a full-time job for me as well. So
no way.
I barely wash my car. So you can make it work, but I'll tell. Like what I tell my customers, if you can commit to at least washing it once a month, you're going to be okay. That can be an automatic wash with PPF, but you're going to wear through that self-healing layer over time. It's really I cannot. Let's see. I don't know how to phrase this. I can't really condone using the brushed washes that are with the. If you're going to do automatic, you should do touchless.
Yeah. All right. So once a week is like, you're good. You can make this, you can keep a high quality finish on this PPF, on this $5,000 you just spent for, you said a 10-year warranty.
Yeah.
I mean, is it still looking good? Like after 5, 7, 9 years, or are you like, man, I want to rip this off?
Yeah, no, the new films are standing up to those type of time frames. So yeah, I put my film on my Focus. So when this was probably my 6th install, so I did it myself, and that was 2018. So 4 years, and it still looks just about as good as the day I installed it. Actually, a little bit better because some of the, where I talked about that adhesive stretching. So it was like my 6th install, so I had some of those marks in there. Those take that kind of time frame to even out. So those look better than the day I installed it, just because that was a install error. But yeah, that 5 to 10 years, it should still be looking very good.
Yeah, and then you mentioned this before, but if it's the clear version, it's essentially not going to change the appearance. If anything, will it appear glossier or not? Okay, if anything, it'll appear glossier.
Because you've got a thicker layer of film on there, so you're adding some depth to that paint. So then that's another sales point for our 10 mil. So our 10 mil is something that we offer as well. It's maybe more for like things like maybe for Rivian, if you're going to off-road the truck more. It's going to be able to stand up to more damage. It's thicker, but then it also will be slightly glossier as well, just because of that added thickness and depth.
They also have a 13 mil, don't they? The Expel Armor or something like that.
Oh, I haven't dealt with it at all. They might, yeah. But what is it called? Like track armor or something like that?
Something like that, and it's got like it's almost got like an orange peel effect to it for more.
Oh,
like you would put it more on like your rocker panel areas. Or I mean, you could do your whole vehicle, but I'd hate to be the installer for that job.
Yeah, so like as you increase that thickness, the difficulty of install goes up, as you go. So,
all right. So this has been helpful, and we still haven't got to stinking ceramic coating, so we have to get there.
Sure.
Give us like the overview on that, what it is and how you describe it.
Yeah. So ceramic coating is.
All right, folks, that's it for this one. Again, catch the entire episode on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or your favorite podcast app. Until the next video, we'll be hanging out at rivianstories.com, so we hope to see you there.